Mr. Rothschild, how you doing, sir? Can you tell us what went on at the Bilderberg meeting this year?
Sorry?
Can you tell us what went on at the Bilderberg meeting this year?
I didn't go to that, actually, no.
The Bilderberg? You weren't there?
No.
Not this year. What went on last year?
No, I wasn't there last year. I think that was my cousin.
Your cousin was there?
Yeah, I think so. Okay.
Do you have a couple minutes for us, Mr. Rothschild? We have a few additional questions.
I was definitely a question inside of, because I was saying that the Federal Reserve was one of these organizations. I know, it's one of these organizations that a lot of people say is the source of main products all across the world because it's a private bank.
That was started by your family.
No, it's completely untrue. I was asked that earlier. It really isn't true. No.
Jekyll Island? Jekyll Island, 1913, sir. I mean, but sir, just one thing, we could go on about how, your family committed all these acts against society, but we just want to let you know the New World Order has no legitimacy. And that we as a people are not afraid, and we are waking up to the robber barons and the big banksters who are looting this economy with the Federal Reserve.
Well,
comes down and beats you over the head for the rest of your life.
We just want to let you know the New World Order has no legitimacy.
People learn to duck their head and not speak up because bad idea now.
This is the emergency broadcast system. This is not a test. Repeat, this is not a test. Citizens are advised to take the following steps.
Find us, armoroftruth.net.
In the age of technocracy, scientism, and pop atheism,
anything is resistance.
Nietzsche, of course, announced the death of God and called for the birth of the Übermensch, the Superman, who would take humanity to new heights and to create a new world order.
Find us at the Armor of Truth YouTube channel.
This is not a test. Repeat, this is not a test.
Greetings, everyone. Summer, let me talk to you for a second before we get started. There you go.
Talk to me.
I just have to say that Lord Rothschild there, he seemed kind of charming.
Yeah, well.
I mean, he didn't seem like, let me show you. Here's what people think of Jacob Rothschild. Jacob Rothschild equals 87. Number of the beast equals 87. Yeah, this is some gematria for you. I'm just going to tell you, don't play with the numbers.
Gematria.
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 There's no ja in Hebrew. Okay?
Keep it real.
Mm-hmm.
Keep it real.
So, you say tomato, I say tomato. Because I say tomato too. But anyway, Armor of Truth Live number 295. CNN is dead. Fox News is dead. MSNBC is a flipping joke. Right?
Well, they don't want it to be around anymore, remember? I mean, this whole business of news has got to be squashed. Got to have the Ministry of Truth putting out the facts.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Today, you can get your news anywhere you want it. I don't suggest you get your news here because we're not news. What we are is we have you understand what the news is. And tonight, Armor of Truth Live number 295, Rothschild. Illuminati ball to fractional reserve banking, the dark legacy of control.
Is it a light topic?
Just light. So, that's how we're going to get started. How the elites also control Israel. We've got that. Jacob Rothschild himself. That was Luke Rudkowski, by the way, with We Are Change. That's a classic. That's a classic Truth or Cotton Candy staple from back in the day. I think that was probably 2011 when he made that clip. Back in the days of We Are Change. So Jacob Rothschild has died at the age of 87. If you're wondering why we're going on and on about Rothschilds. And that's one of our headlines. Another one of our headlines is a 20-year-old man has committed an act of self-immolation. They say. That's what they call it.
25, I believe.
What did I say? 20?
Mm-hmm.
25?
Yeah, I believe he's 25.
My, how the news changes in 24 hours. Self-immolation or self-sacrifice. And they're calling it a sacrifice. We're going to look at this in a little bit too, because this is utter insanity. He did it in Washington, D.C. on Sunday afternoon as a protest against Israeli genocide in Palestine. Not East Palestine, but Palestine.
That's right.
All right. And let us go ahead and remind you while we're here, download the Armor of Truth mobile app. That's how you know when and where we're going live. You'll get whenever we have a new article, you know about it. And by the way, we have a new article.
Got a couple new articles out over the last 2 days.
Yeah, and I thought I don't have it ready. Folks, we're going to take you down the rabbit hole tonight. I've got some clips for you tonight that are they're gonna, what do you say, something? They're going to blow your wig back or something?
Blow your socks off?
Blow your socks off. It's something about the wig. You're not going to have a wig when this is over.
Good thing we don't have a wig.
Okay. I'm trying to kill time so I can show you this article. Right here you go. We have new articles over at Armor of Truth on the Armor of Truth Substack. Is that real? We have 100 subscribers on Substack?
Yeah, we've got more than that now.
Wow.
Yay. Thank you guys for subscribing.
That's awesome. Because gospel first, cultural apologetics, always reforming.
We've got 106.
106 subscribers on Substack.
Mm-hmm.
That's like 100,000 YouTube subscribers.
It is.
Or not really. It
does feel good. It feels really good.
Yeah. Last week we put out God Made Trump. That is sarcastic, by the way. And
well, that was the ad campaign.
That was the ad campaign. And Summer put out this article over the weekend, I believe it was, right? Friday or Saturday?
On the 24th, yeah, a couple days ago.
Please pray for Canada. There's a joke in there somewhere, but we're gonna leave that one out because this is serious business here. Because reading aloud from the Bible, out in public, is going to be considered hate speech. Now, you want to summarize this piece right here? Bill 367?
Yeah, with Bill C-367, following the controversy of Bill C-4 in Canada, there is justification for major concern throughout North America that the Bible teachings, so if you're going to read the Bible out loud, if you're going to speak what the Bible says, you'll no longer have protection to do so, and this would obviously create a just catastrophic situation for anybody that believes in the Bible.
I like this quote. I forgot where it's from. Let me check it out where it's from. Folks, you can always find in our articles. We'll give you our sources and our links at the bottom of the art. You're going to find, this is where you're really going to find a gold mine if you look at the bottom of our articles. This is from Ray Pennings, who wrote a book in 2008 called Church and Caesar. It's, how the church relates to the state and how the state should relate to the church. They are separate spheres. They should not overlap, but that doesn't mean there is a separation of church and state. It just means there will be no state church. As North Americans, we're accustomed to hearing the phrase separation of church and state, raised at the very mention of church and state relations. In the popular mind, this has come to mean that explicitly religious views, or even views that are principally derived from religious perspectives, are inappropriate in the public square. Thinking which suggests that the public square is somehow morally neutral and that a religious view can be kept as purely private and personal is based on a compartmentalized view of humanity that is erroneous. This can be argued from both human experience and history, and as well as from the clarity found in God's Word. So as Summer's been reporting on a lot recently, this is another case of lawfare.
And another one to note is the Scruton book that we've got quoted there at the end about totalitarianism. It's really on point as far as understanding the driver, the worldview that's driving what's happening right now. So definitely be sure to check that out.
Yeah, that's a nice long quote there about totalitarian ideologies, about resentment, how they farm. They create resentment, and then they go out and farm the resentful, to take up their cause. All right, so that's the Please Pray for Canada article. You're going to find plenty in there to satisfy. And here's the article that will be the companion for tonight's show, Notorious. Jacob Lord Rothschild, dead at 87. Well, it's going to be about much more than Rothschild's life. It's going to be about the history of the Rothschild family and how that affects us today. It says here in the article, when it comes to investigative journalism and researchers exposing the dark side of history over the last 30 years at least, the name Rothschild shows up early and often. And there's a little example. That's what was called the Surrealist Ball back in 1972. I believe that was in France. We'll get to this in just a minute. So this is the companion article for tonight's show. There's going to be plenty in here that we're not going to be covering here tonight. Details, all the details will be found right here in this article. Now let's change the mood for a second and jump back over here to this story, this extremely sad, and honestly, for me, this is a frustrating story. It's as frustrating as it is sad.
Well, it's the old saying, never let a crisis go to waste.
Oh, wow, yeah. They're definitely using this one for their advantage. So what has happened, in case you don't know, most of you probably do, in the District of Columbia, that would be Washington, D.C., on Sunday, Metropolitan Police Department released a statement. This was early Monday morning, before everything had gelled, saying that a member of the U.S. Air Force, an airman, an active duty airman, performed an act of self-immolation. We're going to be using those terms instead of the other term because it just seems to get your video, chucked into the bin. But we know what that means, right? He set himself on fire. Sunday, he did not survive. And he did it outside the Israeli embassy in protest of the Israel-Hamas war. Let's see now. He was... So he was... now, there's a video clip that goes along with this that... we're not going to bother playing because it's just harsh. It's disturbing to see, even though they blurred out. I mean, it's out there unblurred, but it's disturbing, and it's incredibly sad because of these responses. The left. Now, first of all, this is not the first time. Recently, this was December 2nd in Atlanta. A protester. I don't think this person. Did this person die? It says at the top of the article, was left in critical condition on Friday, December 2nd, 2023, after setting themselves.
It's not necessarily, I know they were doing the pronouns thing with that article for sure, and it's not really known if it was directly linked or not. They just found some propaganda like flyer nearby. So
what it tells us, well, the police, was it the police chief? Who was it that said here? It's the Atlanta Police Chief Darren Shirebaum said at a news conference, "We don't see any threat here. We believe this was an act of extreme political protest." Now, there's a term. Isn't that right? Did you find that term when you were looking at this story? Mm-hmm. Extreme political protest. Yeah. That's what Bushnell said before he set himself on fire. I'm about to do an act of extreme political protest.
Yeah,
right?
And then USA Today took it upon themselves to break out a whole section about the different people that have done this through the ages.
And what's the phrase?
As a protest.
Yeah, what's the phrase now? It's not rest in peace.
Rest in power.
Rest in power.
Which has also caused an uproar because apparently you're not supposed to use that if you're not, affiliated with the black community.
Yeah. And as you can see here, look at this, folks. Now this poor young man who was obviously disturbed. No one who sets themselves on fire is of sound mind. I think that's safe. I think that's a safe bet. Let's just be honest. All right, we're talking about a 20-year-old kid, and we're talking about a place he's probably never been, conflict he doesn't truly understand, but he has been influenced heavily by whatever movement this is that has infected our young people. His last words were "Free Palestine." So they've turned him into a martyr. Right? And the problem with this is, let's look at this. Let's look at the Daily Mail article. So the leftists are praising Aaron Bushnell for setting himself on fire outside the Israeli embassy and dismiss any claims that he had any mental health concerns. They say he had moral clarity. Now, how in the world they know that? Well, how do they know? They don't know that.
Here's the thing too is I did a little bit of digging, and you don't have to look hard to see that there's claims that his family, his parents are still involved with a church that has come under fire as being a cult, and all the things that are associated with culting, if you will, this particular congregation. I can go through some of those points now if you want me to, or I can save it.
Yeah, let's hear it. Yeah, because we're trying to, we just want to clarify here that you're going to hear in these articles, it's to try to make the case over and over. They want you to believe that this was of sound mind, and he knew had moral clarity, knew exactly what he was about to do. But there's a background here that's a little odd. Go ahead.
Sure. So, so Aaron Bushnell, 25, of Whitman, Massachusetts. He grew up in Massachusetts and attended school on Cape Cod. Apparently, it's emerged that his parents, Dave and Danielle Bushnell, are longtime members of the Community for Jesus Church in Massachusetts. The Community of Jesus is a charismatic, monastic Christian community that is located near Rock Harbor in Orleans, Massachusetts, on Cape Cod, and it's characterized as a charismatic sect. In the Cape Cod Times back in 2019, an article said that the Community of Jesus has been accused of being a cult, and former community members going back decades have alleged that there have been mentally and physically, they're saying that there was mental and physical abuse involved. It's been characterized as a cult as well. On the CBC radio Canadian program, The Fifth Estate, so it's a TV program, The Fifth Estate, CBC describes them as a, quote, mysterious and abusive Christian cult in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Apparently at the church, right now, at this church, there are 25 celibate brothers who are living in Zion Friary, and 60 celibate sisters who are living in the Bethany Convent. A publishing arm of the Community of Jesus has published many works by resident priest Martin Shannon CJ, who stated to the media in 2006 that the sect has no articulation of a theology.
Yeah.
So, but they do.
That's because they're a cult. Cults don't have theology. They're
borrowing bits and bobs from things. So they do, however, state that they follow what is known as the rule of life. According to the Community of Jesus, the rule took its present shape in 2008 after final adoption by a vote of the chapter, which is composed of professed members. Its content is drawn from the inspired, and it's inspired by Scripture, church tradition, the Rule of Benedict, and the founding principles of the Community of Jesus expressed in its founding and in its ongoing evolution. So, it's evolving, this idea that it's evolving and its evolution as it goes along. They state its purpose is to prescribe a standard for spiritual wisdom for community living and to be a basic guide for those who want to commit themselves to monastic life. So the Rule of Saint Benedict is a book of precepts written in Latin by Saint Benedict of Nursia for monks living communally under the authority of an abbot. Saint Benedict is sometimes regarded as the founder of Western monasticism. So they're engaging in Gregorian chants. The church is, it's like a monastic community, and their church building, the Church of the Transfiguration, looks like a contemporary expression of 4th century, like a 4th century basilica. One former member said that it's fairly common for young people who grew up in the community to join the U.S. military, going from one high control group to another high control group. And I just want to say that the controversy surrounding the alleged abuse further emerged through a successful class action suit against Grenville Christian College, which has close ties to the Community of Jesus. The co-founders were all members of the Community of Jesus, and so that went through. And it's located, if you guys want to know, this college used to be located in a rural community outside of Maitland, some 5 miles northeast of Brockville, Ontario, on the bank of the St. Lawrence River, and it was serving kids. So Independent University Preparatory School was composed of upper, middle, elementary, and primary school kids. So they could either be daytimers or full-time boarders. And in 1981, the school was noted as having ties, like I said, with the Community of Jesus. And it's controversial. Students allege extreme and bizarre humiliations occurring on the campus. So less than about 2 weeks before the episode, fast forward to today, and Bushnell and a friend spoke on the phone about what sacrifices were needed for them to be effective as anarchists. So the thing is that he's been declared as an anarchist, and that he had this very traumatizing upbringing in this cult religious sect. So
yeah, this is disturbing, folks, for many reasons, not the least of which is this cultic religious element.
Right, like how can they say that he's of sound mind, as they claim very boldly, never let a crisis go to waste. They're like, he was of sound mind.
That's what they're doing.
And yet he's got this background.
Yeah, so the church, now we were just in our last couple shows really, we were talking about the church at Colossae and the church at Galatia, and we're talking about exactly this. In our show we did about, or the upload we gave you about the fear of holidays, and specifically Valentine's Day, it was happening around that time. We were telling you about how in the New Testament, the Apostle Paul is talking to people who are doing exactly this, who are being influenced. The church at Colossae dealt with this kind of heresy. People that were trying to get them to pull them back into the law. You've got to do this, you've got to do that. And you can see here from what Summers just described, that's what this is. This elements of, I don't know that I would call it Gnosticism, but there's some Judaizing in there, trying to keep the law, asceticism, trying to live a monastic lifestyle. They have 225 professed members. This is just Wikipedia. Together with 50 children and young people, live as households in 30 privately owned multifamily homes that surround the church and guest house. Includes 25 celibate brothers who are living in the Zion Friary, and the 60 celibate sisters who are living in the Bethany Covenant. So altogether, about 275 people. What I find interesting is it says they pull from Presbyterian, Episcopalian, Congregational, Baptist, Lutheran, Anglican, Methodist, Pentecostal, and Roman Catholic liturgies, I guess you would say, or theologies. And that is about as...
Even the Episcopalian Church rejected them.
Even the...
So that's kind of a sign, because they're extremely liberal.
No, they take anybody. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what's really frustrating to me about this is this, right? You got Cornel West here. These are despicable human beings. I don't mind saying it, because there's Jill Stein. I think it's interesting that there's a certain political persuasion involved here. It's not like there are people from both conservatives and liberals speaking in unison here. No, this is definitely a left-wing response. Jill Stein said, "Rest in power," Aaron Bushnell on Twitter. "May his sacrifice deepen our commitment to stop genocide now." Now, this is Jill Stein. Is Stein a senator or a congresswoman? I've lost track of Jill Stein. Somebody will surely let us know. Point is, she should know better. Rest in power. Because all that does is that creates a context and a circumstance where people are going to want to repeat this. Right? Remember, we've been talking about envy, resentment, and entitlement. And this group, this particular vein of the progressive movement, totalitarian ideology. It's just what we were talking about, the Roger Scruton. They prey on those who feel resentful. First of all, they put out a message that makes people feel resentful, right? Feel resentful either for what they don't have, or it makes them feel ashamed about who they are, right? He's wearing the uniform and he's ashamed of his nation. Now, it's one thing to be ashamed of your nation and what your nation's doing. This is a wrong response. This is mental illness. But it says in the article here on the Daily Mail, Bushnell, they were praising Bushnell for setting himself on fire outside the embassy and dismiss mental health concerns, saying he had moral clarity. Moral clarity. In other words, this was the right thing for him to do. He has a family. We've just talked a little bit about who they are. They're a little bit, a few bricks shy of the load, that full load, that's for sure. But he's got a family. And his life is now over. And it wasn't a sacrifice. There is no sacrifice. There is no such thing. There is no sacrifice. Jesus Christ was the ultimate last sacrifice of all sacrifices. There are no sacrifices. So that's what's so sad. That's what's so pitiful about this, is that this was for absolutely nothing. It's not going to bring awareness to anything. It's only going to bring awareness to the fact that these people are absolutely and utterly insane, completely lost. They're off the reservation. Let's see. So he did this on Sunday. He died later Sunday night.
Do you want to read his last words?
Yeah, I had it. It's actually here in this video here. It says, many of us like to ask ourselves, this was the last post he made before he did his act of self-immolation.
Yeah, it was on his Facebook page.
Many of us like to ask ourselves, what would I do if I was alive during slavery? You are alive during slavery. There are more slaves in the world today than there were during the transatlantic slave trade. You are alive during slavery, and you can do something about that, and you don't have to set yourself on fire. Anyway, if you're alive during slavery, what would you do? Or the Jim Crow South. The Jim Crow South. Like he knows anything about the Jim Crow South. He's just heard about it from people like Cornel West. Or apartheid. That would be South African racism. What would I do if my country was committing genocide? The answer is you're doing it right now. That's sad. It's disturbing.
It's really sad too, because actually there's a lot of genocide going on that is not being discussed.
Yeah. In fact, who is setting themselves on fire for the Christians who are being killed in the world right now? Violent persecution, being killed. There is no people group in the world that is more persecuted to death than Christians in this world right now. Well, that's not, we don't need to talk about that. Right? David Wood had a post on his Twitter or his X account the other day. 2 days ago, several Christians were killed. I don't remember where it was. It might have been Nigeria. It was definitely an African nation that is a Muslim majority. But you won't hear about that. You won't hear about that, especially because the young people in our nation are busy setting themselves on fire for leftist causes. Now, here's what's interesting about this. We actually align with that message in a sense, right? We're not pro-Israel no matter what. You know, we're not Christian Zionists. We're not Zionists at all. There is no nation of Israel in the world today. That nation that's there, they can call it Israel all they want. That is the landmass where the Old Testament nation of Israel existed. But Israel is gone. We've been over this many times. We've got articles in our Substack. We've got videos here on this channel that go into great detail with that. We won't do it right now. Romans chapter 11 in great detail. Jesus Christ himself said this. Not until you recognize who your Savior is will you exist. Now, we're not sure whether they'll exist again as a nation at some point or just individually be brought into the faith, but they don't exist right now. What will happen in the future? That's a different story, but anyway. Now, this geopolitical nation of Israel, there. So that's what I'm saying is we actually would agree that that the nation of Israel has been illegally established, and that they're not acting in good faith at all. And when a Christian sees another group acting in bad faith or in violence in some way, and to be clear, they have been on the receiving end of hatred and violence as well. So it's not so simple, and setting yourself on fire is not going to solve it. So, you got these characters here, Cornel West, presidential candidate again. Let us never forget the extraordinary courage and commitment of Brother Aaron Bushnell. You see, there's a religion here who died for truth and justice. No, he died for a lie. He died because he was influenced and his young mind was twisted by you people.
And it's sad too, because since he was raised with this family and this particular understanding of Jesus Christ, it was clearly not the true gospel. It was not the way, the truth, and the life. And it's very tragic because he became disillusioned with that clearly, and probably bruised and tattered because of it, and then fell prey to this.
Yeah.
So
here's all you need to know right here. I thought I had it up there. Black Lives Matter activist Shaun King wrote, I want to honor a young man that was so disturbed by genocide, by the genocide of the Palestinians, that he set himself on fire yesterday at the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. Instead of harming someone else, he made a choice that, of course, seems strange and disturbing to all of us, but I empathize with him. You idiot. You idiot. All you're doing is making more disturbed kids want to become martyrs for no reason. Look at that. How about that?
We're living in the death cult, you know.
That's right. Thank you for saying that, because I forgot. I was so around. I forgot. That's exactly right.
All the laws that are coming into play bit by bit about euthanasia as well.
Yeah. Euthanasia in Canada, 1 million abortions a year between Canada and America. You're living in the middle of the death cult. Listen to these people. Look at these messages. Mainstream media want us to contemplate the mental health of Aaron Bushnell while ignoring the fact that the governments of Israel and the U.S. are committing a genocide in a concentration camp in 2024. The odd result is that a sick world is accepting of deliberate mass murdering by Hamas, then occasional accidental collateral damage by Israel was another statement. Listen, folks. One more time, just so you don't forget, Christians are being killed today in greater numbers than any other people group on the planet. And most of them are not white. Let's just be straight up about it. Most of them aren't white because they're, Christians in the United States and Canada, not yet anyway, are not being persecuted violently. The persecution here is going to look a little different. But in the global East, it's violent and it's deadly.
Take a look at some of those Twitter.
Yeah, I will. But
bookmarks.
Let me read David Wood, a couple of David Wood's comments, because they were just good,
poignant.
Yeah, I appreciate what he had to say. So he was David Wood. Dr. David Wood is a Christian apologist. He deals specifically with ministering directly to Muslims. That is his ministry. That's who he has a heart for, and he's good at it. There's another one of the where they're showing this poor kid as a martyr. This is the death cult. Let's see. Yeah, there you go. David Wood said, to everyone messaging me, suggesting that since this man set himself on fire, he must be right. Let me say clearly. A man setting himself on fire for some cause convinces me of absolutely nothing except the fact that he obviously believes in his cause. Doesn't mean his cause is right. He says otherwise it's not persuasive. David Wood also said it in another tweet. He said, genocide used to mean killing large numbers of people from an ethnic group with the goal of completely destroying that ethnic group. Now it just means fighting enemy combatants with regrettable collateral damage while attempting to retrieve captives and prevent future attacks, which used to be called war. Since the meaning of genocide has been replaced with the meaning of war, what are we now going to call what used to be called genocide? Killing large numbers of people from an ethnic group with the goal of completely destroying that ethnic group. What are we going to call that? Seems like we need a new word because the original word has been distorted beyond recognition for a political agenda. It reminds me of when racism used to mean prejudice against a person based on race, but eventually came to mean anything any college student or leftist doesn't like. Language is changing rapidly, and the changes come from manipulators. One of the simplest ways to sidestep a debate and radicalize your group against the opposition is to redefine words. Racism means anything you disagree with. Woman means anyone who identifies as a woman. Genocide means any fight you're losing. He who controls the language controls the masses. That's well said. David Wood is also, he's Dr. David Wood because he's been through... he's a philosopher, so he speaks very clearly on topics like this. Once again, I'm going to struggle to find our bookmarks. There we go. I can't find my way around Twitter or X or whatever this thing's called these days. Okay, here we go. Here's some of the stuff that some are collected. Wade Lentz had a good statement. Bushnell rejected Christ and was more than likely demon-possessed. Yeah, and sadly, still burning, but now in hell. See, that's what's so awful and pitiful. These people who are praising him right now are inviting more people to hell. They're just inviting more people. Just, hey, speed it up. Go on to hell. We'll be there shortly behind you. You see how evil that is? He did, however, reveal that the Free Palestine movement is more of a satanic cult than a sanctified cause. Yeah, here you go. Rest in power, rest in power. That's the As far as metaphors for the modern left go, burning yourself alive over the fate of a country thousands of miles away only to have fellow leftists spend their time arguing that as a white male, you're an oppressor, unworthy of the term rest in power. Ironic, but pretty perfect. Using rest in power for someone who is in the military and a white man is some nasty work. Yeah, contradictions all over the place. While we journalists are supposed to be the ones speaking truth to power, suffice it to say that Bushnell has put Western corporate media to shame. Really. He's dead. His parents will never see him again. For your cause? What if you're wrong? Rest in power. Jill Stein, Dr. Jill Stein. Let me click on her. I can't remember who she is. She's a doctor, presidential candidate.
American physician, activist, and potential political candidate. Green Party.
People, planet, peace. People, planet, peace. God? At all?
That's code for the triple bottom line. People, planet, profit.
People, planet,
That's
profits.
straight out of the SDGs.
No doubt. She said, may his sacrifice deepen our commitment to stop genocide now. That's because she is a priestess for the death cult. Now here's some of the African American response. How are y'all going to say rest in power to a white man when white people live in power their whole life? You know, well, let's not get into that right now. Ollie London, former Green Party presidential Dr. Jill Stein, presidential candidate, praises the sacrifice. The man who was, at least Ollie London says, was affiliated with Antifa, so we know there's some indoctrination that's happened, received condolences from Jill Stein.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, apparently, I did look to verify that. He did send out several emails to left-leaning websites right before telling him what he was planning to do. The BBC got an email from one of those groups that he had emailed, the Atlanta Community Press Collective. So they had gotten one of his emails and forwarded on to the BBC. So indeed, he was active.
Here's a message to all our Christian brothers and sisters who are black, and you know this already. Rest in power is not a message. That's not an epithet that you want to be claiming for yourself either. That's silliness. Rest in power means nothing. That just aligns you with the world. That aligns you with whatever this neo-pagan death cult really is. A group of Biden administration staffers have renewed their call for a ceasefire now in the wake of Aaron Bushnell's self-immolation protest. May his sacrifice be a haunting reminder for those who refuse to change course. That, essentially, out of the White House, coming out from the administration. All right.
Read the last two lines of that bit. I think it was the ending
this?
there. Yeah.
It says, let me pull it up here for you. Oops. I'm in the wrong place. There we go. Well, anyway, it says, Aaron was always trying to think about how we can actually achieve liberation for all with a smile on his face. He'll never smile again, you moron. He'll never smile again. He'll never take another breath. He's in eternal conscious torment now. There you go.
And I just can't help but, you know that phrase, for all.
For all.
For all.
May his sacrifice be a haunting reminder for those who refuse to change course. Is this just a picture, or did they lower the flag? I don't know. Maybe they did. I don't know. Well, all right. Let's shift gears now. I got that off my chest. I spent about twice as long on that as I meant to, but 3 times actually. That was supposed to be a 15-minute segment. We're 45 minutes in.
We are.
So let's just jump in here to our main event.
I just want to say, though, that when I did see that, I cried. I mean, that was awful.
Yeah, we were sitting here yesterday, writing, reading, researching, and it was disturbing. It just it was kind of a happy day in here. It was kind of lighthearted, and then we came across that story, and it's just heavy. It's disturbing because it's so sad. Somebody else is going to do it. It's just a matter of time. This is the second person.
Well, and this is the power of the media. This is the power of the social engineering. This is the power that they have over people that are vulnerable.
This is a death cult, and their cathedral is the mainstream media. It is social media. That's their cathedral. That's where their doctrine is constantly made, right? Let's have a conversation so their doctrine is constantly being updated. Whatever's necessary. Once again, folks, download the Armor of Truth mobile app. If you do, you get live notifications about where we are. When we go live, you get notifications about our new articles. Sometimes you get surprise messages, and we did one of those at Christmas. It's about time for another one of those to come up. Subscribe to our channel, if you would, please. Help us out a lot because YouTube flat hates us over here. They don't promote our videos at all. We rely on word of mouth completely. So download the Armor of Truth mobile app today for your live notifications, a direct link whenever we go live and wherever. Get exclusive content, articles, reports, and resources. Get podcasts, extra podcast material, Bible study podcasts. And if you can support us, every gift makes a difference. You can use the mobile app Give tab or visit our website, armoroftruth.net/donate. Okay. Nathaniel Charles Jacob Rothschild. Let's see, do I have a big picture? Okay, ooh, there's...
I provided you with one, so you should definitely have it.
Yeah, here you go. Here we go. We'll come back around to this in just a minute. Yes, that's from the Surrealist Ball. That's from a Rothschild party in 1972 called the Surrealist Ball. We'll get around to that in just a moment. Yeah, I don't know where it is. Use that for now. So this is Jacob Rothschild. He was also known as the 4th Baron Rothschild, born on April 29th, 1936, died at age 87, also on Sunday. These two events happened at... Well, we don't know exactly when Rothschild died because they didn't tell us exactly when he died, and they didn't tell us exactly when or where he was, because the Rothschilds are very private, as you'll find out a little later. They're extremely private about everything they do. But he was a prominent member of the Rothschild banking family. He's the eldest son of Victor Rothschild, who was known as the 3rd Baron Rothschild. He's most well known for his involvement, again, in the family's global investment banking and finance businesses that set the tone for the fiat currency and fractional reserve banking scams that plague our world today. Also, the Rothschilds were instrumental in the establishment of the modern state of Israel. So when it comes to investigative journalism, research, and writers who have worked to expose the dark side of history over the last 30 years, the name Rothschild shows up early and often. And that's because they are documented and unapologetic war profiteers. Right from the start. That's how Meyer, Amschel, Rothschild, who's known as the founder of the family, that's how he ultimately made his fortune. He started out as a silk dealer and a money changer in a Frankfurt ghetto, and worked his way up to paying mercenaries, and ingratiated himself with rulers. We'll get to that. But the Rothschild family is a European family of German and Ashkenazi Jewish origin, and they rose to prominence, world prominence, in the late 18th century. However, there goes back to the 16th century. But it was not that simple. They didn't just rise to power. The first known ancestor of the Rothschild family was Isaac Elkanan, who was born in 1577. Now, this is Meyer, Amschel, Rothschild. Before he died in 1812, just to give you an example of kind of how this operates, he banned his female descendants from receiving an inheritance, which forced them to intermarry with their Rothschild cousins in order to remain in the same social strata. So, meanwhile, N.M. Rothschild and Sons Limited, this is the London branch of the Rothschild banking dynasty, nearly single-handedly financed the British Napoleonic War effort. We've got great details about that in our article. And the family's wealth also helped finance the construction of the Suez Canal, various railways in Europe, and secured a mercury monopoly, a valuable commodity, as mercury was then used to refine gold and silver. Also, the robber barons of the mid to late 19th century, or the 1800s in America, were also servants of the Rothschilds, because they all borrowed money to build their empires here. Now, the Rothschilds are most often accused of using their wealth to steer the course of the global economy, or to fund both sides of wars, the Civil War in America, for example. But they're also known for stuff like this. That's right. Let's see. Let me go back. Here we go. Let's give credit here to Kids of Dada, who can put this together, or actually have this. It's available out there in lots of places. So this is the Illuminati Ball from 1972, hosted by Baroness Marie Helene de Rothschild and her husband, Guy. That was just fun to say. This eccentric evening featured otherworldly costumes, bizarre decorations, and allegedly satanic symbolism. You can decide for yourself. With decorative baby dolls. You'll see in a minute, they're not decorative baby dolls, they're dead. Masks resembling all-seeing eyes, and only a few photos that actually survive of this event. Who knows why they were, or how these photos got out, because there's certainly they wouldn't have been happy to have these circulated in perpetuity like this, but they certainly are. So this was in December of 1972, and it's still raising eyebrows today. But the Rothschilds are no strangers to controversy, right? Kind of interesting. So when guests received their invitations to this, the invitation was written backwards, so they had to hold it up into a mirror so they could understand it. So then, as the sun began to set at the house, let's see it. I think there's a picture of the house in here. I'll come back. I'm flying through these, but there is a There's a shot of the house in here somewhere. There it is. But there was actually a shot of the house that evening too, where it was lit up in all red. As the sun began to set and guests arrived, the floodlights made the chateau appear as if it was on fire. Do you remember we were watching the Decay Brothers, or one of these groups, and these guys who go into old abandoned places, homes and castles. They went. I don't know. I think it was this place that they went to. Seems unlikely, but it was a Rothschild chateau in France.
I remember that one. Yeah.
Yeah, it was weird. So it appeared like it was on fire that night. Anything that had to do with fire and Satan, they were all about that evening. The servants inside were dressed as cats, stationed along the main staircase. Dessert was a mannequin of a nude woman made entirely of sugar, laid on a bed of roses. Costumes worn by attendees were just as bizarre. So Salvador Dali was in the house. Let's see. Let's fly through and look at a few of these. Just give you an idea of who this family is and what they're into. Salvador Dali didn't wear a costume, it says here. He didn't need to, right? He is expressive enough in his normal face. Most of these are celebrities. You can't recognize who they are. You'll recognize Audrey Hepburn probably. Yeah, how about that? That's normal. That's normal. That's how you do right there. That's the hosts. That
looks very Midsummer.
It does, doesn't it?
Very
Ari Aster?
Ari Aster.
Ari Aster, that movie, which was also disturbing. I felt nauseated after that one, literally. Yeah, here. Perfumer, Helena Rojas. That's a mannequin, so, just, it's all right. Everything's okay. That's just a mannequin. But it's sugar, mannequin of sugar, and I guess you go up in whatever. Who knows?
The death cult.
Moving right along. Yeah, the death cult for sure. Yeah, there's an odd Mona Lisa mask and whatever else this is. There is Audrey Hepburn with a bird cage on her head. I guess that may have been maybe the most comfortable of the costumes and get-ups on that night. There's Salvador Dali. Let's see what it is. Yeah, Salvador Dali with his guest. Yeah, he wore no costume because he doesn't need one, does he? The great Salvador Dali. Yeah, there you go. Just babies. Nothing to see here. Just babies and burnt corpses. Because that's how you have dinner when you're a normal, God-fearing family. Just a normal Jewish family. Here we go. There's more. Supermodel Marissa Berenson. Never heard of her. And there you go. The apple. It's kind of Adam and Eve-ish, right? Mm-hmm. Of course, it was not an apple. Everyone thinks it was an apple, but that's just folklore. There you go. So, yeah, there you go. That's the deal. There's the host and hostess for the evening, the Rothschilds. Ultimately, whatever happened within the walls of this place on that night, or in the forest behind the chateau, remains a mystery. But we've got these few pictures from there, from the event. Might have been just an eccentric evening for high society to let loose, but it certainly appears to be more than that. And several conspiracy theories suggest that the event was more than it appears. Perhaps it was more than it appears. Perhaps it was something like this. Now, the reason I'm showing this is because it is believed that Stanley Kubrick was well aware of these kinds of parties, specifically the Rothschilds, and patterned this scene and this cult that Tom Cruise's character became involved with, patterned it after what he had seen or was familiar with in these groups. I'm thinking that should have been the thumbnail right there.
You don't want to give people nightmares.
Yeah. So in that, we'll back out of that.
Well, it's also, all of these images are reminding me of the images that we saw a few years ago from Marina Abramovic.
Interesting that you would bring up Marina, because she is a very close friend of, well, guess who? Let's see, right here we go. If it's not in this thread, it's in, there's the Illuminati ball again. There you go, son. What do you think about that? There is.
That's a shocker.
Lord Rothschild and Marina Abramovich, the person who put this up, says, does it all make sense now? Jacob Rothschild, widely accepted as the man who created Israel. You know, he's not the one who created Israel, but it was definitely two of his uncles that had everything to do with it. He continued that. He continued the support in the 20th century, but Israel really was, the groundwork for the creation of the state of Israel was in the mid-1800s, late 1800s. Mm-hmm. And then with the Balfour Declaration in 1917. And Jacob wasn't born until 1936. So Israel became a nation when he was about 11 or 12 years old. But he certainly did keep up the tradition. So yeah, there you go. And I don't know what that art behind them is, but it's very Roman and whatever. Here is Prince Charles pinning something on
the Climate King.
People are loving it. They're Lord Jacob Rothschild died exactly 6 years, 6 months, and 6 days after the August 21st, 2017 eclipse, and exactly 6 weeks before the upcoming April 8th, 2024 eclipse. Number of the beast. Folks, he's not the beast. He's hanging out with the beast now. And I hope not. I mean, mate, you don't know what I mean. Deathbed. Just remember the thief on the cross. When he got to heaven, everyone wondered, why in the world is he there? He just said, the man on the middle cross said I could come. And that's all it takes. But it's unlikely in this case. I think we'll be very surprised at who we see when we make it to heaven. It's going to be interesting. Let's listen to this clip of Jacob Rothschild talking about
Lord Rothschild. I have much.
This is the letter, November 2nd, 1917. This would have been Lord Rothschild. This would have been to his uncle Edmund, I believe, Edmund or Walter, one of the two. Let's see.
In modern Jewish history, and it begins with 3 words. Dear Lord Rothschild.
Dear Lord Rothschild, I have much pleasure in conveying to you, on behalf of His Majesty's government, the following declaration of sympathy with Jewish Zionist aspirations, which has been submitted to and approved by the Cabinet.
30 minutes?
Why was it that this letter was sent by the Foreign Secretary to your great-uncle Walter?
It's an interesting question because it was primarily a movement from Eastern Europe, but they didn't clarify who was in charge of that movement. And in addition, it was, after all, in Great Britain. So they felt that the Rothschild family should be the one to whom it was addressed. And Walter was Lord Rothschild, and he was a Zionist. And those really are the background reasons.
So Walter received the Balfour Declaration, and I have a copy here. And I wonder if I could possibly ask you to read it for us.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. I'm going to put on my spectacles to make sure I read it accurately. His Majesty's government view with favour the establishment of Palestine as a national home for the Jewish people, and will use their best endeavours to facilitate the achievement of this object, it being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine, or the rights and political status enjoyed by Jews in any other country. I should be grateful if you would bring this declaration to the knowledge of the Zionist Federation. Yours, Arthur Balfour.
And here it is, the Balfour Declaration.
What have I done? Is this... Am I not showing this? You could hear Rothschild there, but you couldn't see him. Goodness, what have I done? I can't figure out what my okay, it's not there. If you bear with me, folks, I've got a new setup here, and it's just a little. Let's get off of those people. Those people are spooky. There we go. Right there. I've just completely flummoxed myself here with all my options. Okay, because I've got this over in the on the opera side. Okay. I apologize, folks. What you would have seen there had I taken a little more care presenting it would have been this. You'd have seen Lord Rothschild reading the Balfour Declaration, which was the statement from the British government to the Rothschilds. It was a statement of that they would a Zionist, a pro-Zionist
sympathy
statement.
with Jewish Zionist aspirations, which has been submitted to and approved by the cabinet.
Why was it that this...
There you go.
His Majesty's government view with favour the establishment of Palestine as a national home for the Jewish people.
If you notice what the first thing he said there, establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. Now, Summer, I ask you, what was the big argument all along about that in the past year since we've been, in earnest for about 8 months now, studying hard on this topic of Israel and the creation of the state of Israel and what it really is. What was the claim? The claim was that Palestine was never a thing, right? It was never a nation.
Right.
What you see right here in the Balfour Declaration, or you hear the British government writing to the Rothschilds saying, we want to establish a Jewish homeland in Palestine. Clearly it existed, and it was something, right? It was
right.
It was
there it is in black and white.
What do you want to call it? A nation, a state, or whatever. It was something that was recognized for sure. But I was just as that was playing earlier, I was saying, so here we have Jacob Rothschild, Lord Rothschild, our generation's Lord Rothschild, reading the Balfour Declaration, which really set the stage for the creation of the modern nation of Israel. And that's interesting. And since it's going to hang up right there, we'll just move on. Somebody said Israel's a fake state created by evil globalists. All right, well, I'm not going to argue with it. So let's talk just a little bit about the history. In our article, we go into great detail about all of this, but I'm going to hit some of the, just hit a little outline message of it. In Chapter 1 of Howard Sakar's A History of the Jews in the Modern World, we read. Now, this is about where the Rothschilds emerged from. Frankfurt, in what we today call Germany, was one of the 4 remaining free cities of the Holy Roman Empire in the 16th century. Specifically here we're talking about, let's put ourselves in the middle of the 16th century, 1750s or 60s. It was one of the German world's 3 most important commercial trading posts, or it was a port on the Main River. In the city's principal business center, there was a large wooden gate demarcating still another townlet within the larger urban area, a ganglion of twisting alleys, ramshackle storefronts, and cramped apartment structures. The gate's solitary entrance guarded by an armed warden. The little enclosure was the Judengasse, the Jews' lane. It was the ghetto of the Jews. Unquote. This scene was typical throughout West Central Europe. The Jews lived like unwelcome immigrants, even though their ancestors had lived on European soil as far back as the Roman Empire, or as far back as the height of the Roman Empire. So this would have been, this would have been, if this was, let's say this 1700s, we're talking about, 1800 years. Since the first century, or since before the first century, since before Christ. Well, the Frankfurt settlement can be traced back to the 11th century, when approximately 200 Jews settled there in rat-infested slum condition. In the 14th century, the bubonic plague hit Frankfurt. Now, plague is a disease spread by fleas that proliferate on rats or animals, but when there's a lot of rats, a lot of fleas, this is an issue. This could be a danger. So, since rumors fueled by fear and panic spread as fast as the disease, and in many places the Jews alone were blamed for the ravages of the Black Death. Fear and superstition caused an outbreak of brutal violence toward the Jews in these days. Now, Meyer Amschel Rothschild, known as the founder of the family, was born in Frankfurt's Jewish ghetto in 1744. As the fourth of 8 children, his father, Amschel Moses Rothschild, was a money changer and a silk cloth dealer. At age 13, Meyer went to Hanover to serve an apprenticeship with the bank of Wolf Jakob Oppenheim. At age 19, he returned to Frankfurt, where he became a dealer in rare coins and set up his own money-changing operation. Essentially, what money changing is here is it is loaning liquid assets, or what we today would call cash, loaning liquid assets at a price. And it's called usury in the Bible. But Meyer was later on honored by Wilhelm IX of Hesse with an aristocratic title, which is, we talk about that in the, he had his aristocratic title, and then his son in London, Nathan, who was in London, and his son Solomon in Austria also were given aristocratic titles of nobility. Well, Meyer's banking business expanded to become one of the biggest in Frankfurt. This was the first of the deeply powerful connections that would establish the Rothschilds as the source of capital for kings, wars, nation building, and nation killing. Right? Because you can't just say, oh, well, look what they built there in the Levant. It's the nation of Israel, right? Because something had to go to make way for that, right? Something had to be moved out. Something had to be killed. Meyer Rothschild had 5 sons whom he strategically dispatched to the 5 major financial centers of Europe, where each would establish the family method of fiat currency manipulation. This ensured that all the markets of Europe would be under the influences of the Red Shield. Son number 3 was Nathan Meyer Rothschild. He was sent to England, where he eventually settled in London, establishing N.M. Rothschild and Sons in London. He married Hannah Berendt Cohen in 1806, with whom he had 7 children, 3 daughters and 4 sons. In Austria, 5 family lines were given aristocratic titles of nobility by Emperor Francis II in 1816. So this is where all the connections were established. This is where they finally, shall we say, can we say tentacles? Would we say tentacles? Into everything.
Put the feelers out.
They became barons of the Habsburg Empire. Later, Queen Victoria elevated the branch of the family in England into British nobility. Now, the family crest depicts a clutch of 5 arrows representing each son and their unity and purpose, which was wealth acquisition. The arrows, according to the description they would give of their crest, the arrows reference Psalm 127, which says, like arrows in the hands of a warrior, so are the children of one's youth. Like sands through the hourglass, so
are the days of our lives.
The family motto reads Concordia Integritas Industria, unity, integrity, industry. Meyer, Rothschild, planned to keep the wealth entirely in the family. He did this. The reason for this was so that you could keep the details of their fortune secret. So Meyer would arrange marriages of his sons with first or second cousins in the way royal families intermarry. Seeking to secure similar legacy, many other Jewish financiers in Europe repeated this ruse. And so the European banking fraternity, very Jewish, very familiar, and by today's standards one might even say incestuous, but it was their skill, their financial acumen that allowed them to take charge of most of the European economy right down to the present day. Donald Watkins wrote this. By 1815, Nathan Meyer Rothschild in England, by 1815, he had control of the Bank of England. So he had control of the nation and boldly declared this. Oops. Oh, I've got it on the wrong thing. There we go. He said, permit me to issue and control the money of a nation, and I don't care who makes the laws. Another translation has it, I care not what puppet is placed upon the throne of England to rule the empire on which the sun never sets. The man who controls Britain's money supply controls the British Empire, and I control the British money supply. That's a nice modus ponens argument. That's logic. It's true. This became the Rothschild family's mantra. Control the world by controlling the world's money supply. Control the world by controlling the world's money supply. Let that sink in, because that model is still at work. And by the end of the 1800s, the Rothschild family controlled half of the world's wealth. Now, that would mean that they controlled most of the wealth in Europe and the New World, America. Over the centuries, the Rothschild scheme of early fractional reserve banking, fiat currency, loans, government bonds, and gold trading was perfected and expanded exponentially. And by the 19th century, the Rothschild dynasty became the world's premier fiat money lending behemoth. But why? Why were they able to do it? Why were they so successful? Aside from a disturbing level of commitment to familial loyalty, what was different? Well, I don't offer an answer to that question. I just throw it out there for you in the article to consider. Why do you think they were so successful? Why do you think they were so successful? Why were they so successful at this? What was different about them? I mean, there's no right answer. I'm just thinking, what do you think? Where did their power come from? I think it probably has to do with the fact that they were willing to do anything for profit.
Certainly.
And that's what we find out. When you see that someone is willing to fund both sides of a war, that's a person who has no moral compass.
Correct.
They have no need for morality. They create their own morality as they go, because their morality is profit. Whatever makes profit is good. What does that sound like? Right? That sounds like our world right now, right?
No qualms about using deception.
Yeah, it's about, today the idea is progress. Just why? Where are we going? Nobody knows, nobody cares, just progress.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the trick to their scheme was the art or the deception of loaning out more currency or banknotes, not actual money, but banknotes, than you have assets on hand to back. And this exists this day as the standard method of capital acquisition. It's the standard economic method or model. Now, I am no economist. That is clear. You can tell that already. I'm not a banker, and I'm not a businessman. Summer can tell you that. But anyway, it doesn't matter. A rudimentary explanation of this system, which is a type of usury that makes everyone feel as if they have more stuff, but it places the entire economy in peril. I can give that. Here are the top three things that banks don't want you to know. According to the law, legally, you don't deposit your money with a bank. You don't deposit your money with a bank. It becomes their money when you give it to them. It's no longer your money when you make a deposit. You don't possess it. It doesn't belong to you anymore. They account for this money that you've handed them as an asset. It's now their asset because it's legally their property now. Now this is the system that was established by the Rothschild banking, shall we say, cartel. So in return, when you give the bank your money, you get something like an IOU. It's a deposit account. You get an accounting of the fact that you gave them money. An honest name for the account would be an unsecured loan to us account, right? You've made an unsecured loan to the bank because they could fail and your money would be gone. That's why it's unsecured. But if you call it a deposit, it sounds a little better. You're more willing to maybe do it. So, number two, there is no such thing as the deposit insurance. Summer, we have learned this in the last year. What's the name of the bank in Silicon Valley that collapsed in like a day? We remember what that was. I can't remember the name of it right now. But and this is why. This will explain to you why the system can be manipulated. It'll explain to you why the system can collapse at any time. This will explain to you exactly how it's manipulated, puffed up, and collapsed on purpose, too. Unlike real insurance, the government doesn't have enough money to cover your deposit, your unsecured loan that you've given them. So the government will print additional money to cover your loan to the bank if the bank goes bankrupt. And that is where we get the term inflation. When the bank, when there's more cash, banknotes, important looking pieces of paper out there in the market than there is actually gold or real assets to back it up. Third, inflation is simply a way of measuring a reduction in your purchasing power. Your important looking piece of paper is worth less than it used to be. It would better to call it a theft index, and it's because it's essentially a transfer of value from bank account holders to debtors. Usually this happens just a bit at a time, so you don't notice the missing money. Debtors benefit from inflation because they have to repay less value in real terms. So who are by far the largest debtors in an economy? Oh, that would be the government. Remember what Meyer said? He will own the government. Doesn't care who makes the laws because he owns the money supply and therefore he owns the government. The government and the banking sector together by issuing IOUs.
Corporate governance.
Corporate governance. There you go. Who is mainly in charge of determining the amount of inflation in an economy? The government and the banking sector. So it's like having the fox in the hen house. It's like giving your money to a gangster and saying, hold that for me. I might come back and ask for it later. So recessions occur in an economy regularly, like an economy like this regularly, when there's a fractional reserve banking system at work. They're an inherent part of fractional reserve banking. In fact, they're designed to be as such. They're the norm. Recessions are the norm, not the exception. Inflation is the norm, not the exception. This is our modern fractional reserve banking system. It's not based on capitalism. It's more like a closed medieval guild system and will always exclude outgroups by its very nature. It is as destructive as it is dishonest. It is about as far away from the concept of value and from our better human values as you can possibly get. Now, the thing about this is the U.S. Constitution does not authorize any private for-profit corporation to create money, to coin money, to regulate its value, or to fix the standard of weights and measures. But that is exactly what the Rothschilds established in Europe and implemented in America through the robber barons, Rockefeller, Carnegie, Morgan, Harriman, and others. And they did this through the central bank. You can look at if you do a search, you can find a quote from Abraham Lincoln, who was looking for a way to fund the nation during the Civil War. So he had a meeting with the Rothschilds. They said, sure, we'll loan you all the money you need at 35% interest, and we want to be able to create a central bank in America. Well, Abraham Lincoln was smarter than that. He said, I'll be in touch, left, never talked to them again, and created his own banking scheme, sort of. He had a man there that worked with him that was familiar with Rothschild banking, and they set up their own scheme, and it was called the Greenbacks. Well, you can find that. I didn't include it in the article because the article is it's 5,000 words, about as far as we can go with it. By the way, thank you this way. Thank you for that super chat. Thank you very much. We certainly do appreciate your support. Yeah, it's a super sticker. That's a super sticker. You can do super chats, super stickers. As long as we're still monetized, you can. Who knows how long that will last? As we're talking about finance, it's talking about monetization here. Thank you, Leeway. And you're welcome, by the way. Thank you and you're welcome. What is the Federal Reserve? The Federal Reserve Bank is a system of 12 banks, and they are privately owned. They're not government. They're privately owned for-profit corporations, and they were initiated in 1913 by President Woodrow Wilson. Why did he do that? Well, because he got a campaign donation of $80,000 that convinced him to do that. It's a lot of money in 1913. So the Federal Reserve is a big problem. The Federal Reserve has never been audited. There are 600 registered shareholders of the Federal Reserve, and nobody knows who they are. At least it's not been publicly revealed ever. So, does that sort of close to the vest, very secretive kind of money lending, that kind of keep it in the family secrecy, does that sound familiar at all? More facts about the Federal Reserve. Over time, U.S. taxpayers have paid $286 billion to the Federal Reserve System in interest on money borrowed from the Federal Reserve. That money was issued from the U.S. Treasury. Where does the money in the U.S. Treasury come from? Your taxes. The taxes from U.S. citizens. You see what's going on here? For example, send Meyer Rothschild, send him $100. And his bank will issue you back a loan at a fabulous rate of only 12% interest. The Rothschild system of creating something from a fraction of something until that which the people hold is eventually a lot of nothing has found a home in America and will eventually collapse the nation's economy exactly as it was designed to do. So the Rothschild banking system, they continued diversifying their operations in the 1980s and 90s into the 20th century now. Venturing into mergers and acquisitions, corporate finance, and asset management. And in the 21st century, 2003, the French and British branches of the Rothschild family consolidated their banking operations under the leadership of David René de Rothschild, creating a single entity called Rothschild and Company, which marked a significant unification within the family's banking business. Today, Rothschild and Company operates as a multinational investment bank and financial services company still controlled by the Rothschild family and maintaining a significant presence in global financial markets. What's the answer to all this? How do you solve this fiat currency problem, right? See, the problem is that there's not enough labor and there's not enough goods or commodities out there to actually back all the currency that's out there in the world now. So what has to happen is, Summer, a great reset. Are you surprised?
No. This
Of course.
is the plan.
Of course, it's a great reset. That's what we have to have, right? And so what will the value, what will back the value of money in the Great Reset, after the Great Reset? Well, what they would like to do is to transfer value away from real property because they don't want you owning any of that. They're going to have that for themselves. And the commodity that's going to back currency will be information, personal information, other kinds of information. Because with AI, information can be created out of nothing. Ex nihilo. It can't really, but I mean, in the hopes and dreams of the Klaus Schwabs of the world, right? Information is in limitless supply. So this is not good. And this is the problem with the concept of perpetual progress and ever-expanding economy. It puts the people who actually work to maintain the economy, the workforce, us, all of us, puts us in dire jeopardy of losing everything, literally at any minute. That's why your faith has to be in something eternal, the only eternal something. Human beings do not have infinite reserves of energy. This is just like the teaching on charity we were given the other day. We don't have infinite reserves of energy to work. We don't have infinite energy to work and create goods or provide services. The earth doesn't have infinite reserves of real property to back the perpetual printing of currency. At some point, the whole thing will collapse. It's inevitable. And that's why now they're trying to slowly implement some new system. I don't think they're going to do it. I don't think it's going to happen. I think something else is going to happen. But Summer and I probably disagree on that because I'm the glass half full guy. I have to be, because I just need to be. This is the crux of the Great Reset, to figure out how to siphon more value out of humanity and the earth's resources while maintaining their position of power. So in our article, we've included a detailed account of how Nathan Rothschild colluded with his brothers and profited from the battle at Waterloo. And we've got a disclaimer in there with that too, because that's a disputed story, but you can read about that yourself. About how, all wars are bankers' wars. So the famous quote attributed to this same Nathan Rothschild is also, it's not really confirmed, or it could be misattributed. However, it couldn't be more true. Let me issue and control the nation's money, and I don't care who makes the laws, because I control the government, because I control the money. So in the 20th century, during both world wars, N.M. Rothschild and Sons played a significant role in financing the British war effort, and after World War II, the bank helped finance the reconstruction of Europe and continued its growth internationally, establishing even more operations in key financial centers worldwide. The Rothschilds set the model for speculative finance during the 19th century as the major holders of wealth and assets necessary for rapidly expanding the industrial economies of Europe and America. They controlled the lion's share of the goods and infrastructure, such as large-scale mining, railroad, and shipping ventures that would power the Industrial Revolution of the late 19th century in the New World. So perfecting this system of perceived value artificially pumped and dumped markets and control of the very minds of the men they pushed along like pawns. It enriched and empowered the Red Shield to the rarefied air of becoming the largest privately held fortune in the modern world by the 19th century. In fact, there has never been a larger hold of private wealth in history. I cut out the part about the Red Shield, about Rothschild, Red Shield, Rothschild. It just comes from in the Jewish ghetto there in Frankfurt. You had to hang a sign or a shield on your house denoting your class and your business, and it so happens that their shield was red, and they took that name. There are other stories out there about that, but I'm satisfied that one seems to be the accurate one. You have to be careful. There are conspiracy theories out there. Well, as you said, America has a constitution that prevents this kind of thing, but they have found ways through U.S. Code, which is kind of another set of law that was established by the corporation that is the United States federal government. There's a rabbit hole we don't need to get into tonight. But the Rothschild family found its way into America during the Industrial Revolution via, among others, the Rockefellers in the oil industry, the Carnegies in steel, the Harrimans, Mr. Harriman in railroad. These men would become known as robber barons. They got their start by borrowing money from the Rothschilds. And so this infusion of capital allowed America's first industrial giants to establish monopolies and gain enormous power over the nation and its institutions. Power which is still firmly held to this day. And that brings us to our clip here. I have a link. I'm not going to play it tonight. I'll play a couple seconds of it. I want you guys to watch this too. The story of your enslavement. It's over 10 years old now. Stefan Molyneux made it years ago. It's linked in the article. And
This is the story of your enslavement. How it came to be, and how you can finally be free. Like all animals, human beings want to dominate and exploit the resources around them. At first, we mostly hunted and fished and ate off the land, but then something magical and terrible happened to our minds. We became, alone among the animals, afraid of death and of future loss. And this was the start of a great tragedy and an even greater possibility. You see, when we become afraid of death, of injury and imprisonment, we become controllable.
How about that? How about that, Summer? Does that remind you of 2020?
Indeed.
Become afraid of death, you are easily controlled. But if you're in Christ today, you don't have to be afraid of any such thing. All right, but here's the clip for now. The Robber Barons. This is a documentary that's also linked in our article. JFK to 9/11, a conspiracy classic. Part 1, everything is a rich man's trick. I'm going to play a little clip here about these robber barons, and you'll see where they got their start from.
To answer these questions, we must inevitably step back into history, and most people will not like this very much, because most people have very little interest in history. This, however, is going to be a history lesson, quite unlike anything that anyone has ever heard. It certainly will be nothing like what we are taught in school, and yet it begins with a name which most people have heard, but probably won't be able to place. The name of E.H. Harriman. Who was E.H. Harriman?
Dynamite's ready, Butch.
Mr. E.H. Harriman himself, he had the confidence of...
Open the door or that's it! You think E.H. Harriman would get himself killed for you? Woodcock?
I worked for Mr. E.H. Harriman on the Union Pacific Railroad, and he entrusted me.
sure Americans in particular will be amused to learn that Edward Henry Harriman was actually a real historical figure. This man was one of America's first industrial giants, and like the Rockefellers in oil and the Carnegies in steel, he got his start by borrowing money from the Rothschilds, of whom we'll hear more later, to create a monopoly for his own business, which was railroads. He was the 19th century railroad king. It was a monopoly which wouldn't be allowed today, and it helped in turn to create the Rockefeller oil monopoly. And this gave America's first industrial giants colossal power. These were the first people in human history, we mustn't forget, whose businesses were worth more than most countries. People whose fortunes dwarfed anything that the Caesars or the Tudors or the Medici ever dreamed of. So, being greedy, they used this power to engage in price fixing. Naturally, they formed a cartel. Their attitude was that they could charge whatever they liked for steel and oil and transporting goods on the railways. They knew that all American business was dependent on them, and they'd made sure there was no competition. So they could ignore market forces and charge pretty much whatever they liked. Now this naturally caused resentment, and it's very interesting that the press at that time started calling these first Illuminati bankers and industrialists robber barons. Of course, once these fortunes began to be made, others naturally tried to get in on the act. One who succeeded was J.P. Morgan, who became a private banker during this period. But modern critics have discovered that far from being the richest man in America everyone thought he was, it turned out upon his death that Morgan actually only owned 17% of Morgan Bank, and that like so many others, he was simply a front for the Rothschild family.
There you go. I provided the clip I provided here in the article. I gave you the 4-minute mark to the 9-minute mark to get a really good background here. I'll stop it right here so you can watch it. But I encourage you to watch the whole thing because it's really good. It starts off with a theory about the JFK thing that happened in Dallas. That you know what it was. Whatever you think of that, it is one theory. But what's more interesting is just this general breakdown of how finance in the world has worked over the last 150 years. So it is from these men and this system that the term crony capitalism first came into the lexicon the way we use it today. It means capturing government power with wealth, by those with enough financial resources to influence the direction of markets in order to stack the economic deck in their favor and to bend society toward their will. By the way, in the chat, it's pretty active in the chat tonight. Some folks are right. Don't forget Henry Ford. No doubt. I want to say, what's up to Mithridates of Los Angeles. That's the screen name of the night right there. Mithridates of Los Angeles. Anyway, instead of the people electing candidates to serve their economic needs, these powerful elites, through funding and control of the public narrative, right? How many newspapers would you have to own in order to control generally the opinion of the masses? That was the question asked by I've just completely forgot the West Coast media mogul and the East Coast media mogul, the two who warred in the late 1800s, created the period of yellow journalism where the very first UFO stories came from. It was just airships, but they would put these on the covers of their newspapers, airships and these men from the moon. Later on, it become men from Mars. Then it become men from Venus, and now it's people from where is it? The Pleiades, Zeta Reticuli. Come on, folks. Anyway, you can see how this works, right? You control the public narrative. And then with their money, they empower the representatives who benefit their personal and financial interests the most. Right? We don't really have an honest system. I'm encouraging you to be engaged with it because as Christians, we need to take Christ into that and let God bless us through that action. deal with that however you will. You can think of that what you want, but I'm standing by that. I think Christians are called to be in action. That's the Great Commission, right? But put simply, this is just the redistribution of wealth toward the powerful by controlling and essentially replacing market economies with controlled political markets. Okay, now, we said earlier on we talked about how the Rothschilds created Israel. The Rothschild family has been deeply connected with Zionism since the notion of establishing a Jewish state was first considered in the 19th century. Baron Edmund James de Rothschild strongly supported the Zionist cause and laid the early groundwork for future Rothschild involvement, which Jacob Rothschild would gladly pick up and run with in the 20th century. Now, let's work a definition here for you. Zionism. What is Zionism? Zionism is a movement for the reestablishment, development, and protection of a Jewish nation. Where, Summer? In Palestine. That place that doesn't exist, right? And until it's convenient that it does. Mm-hmm. Edmund Rothschild was so influential in the founding of Israel and so loved by Jews everywhere that he was affectionately given the nickname Hanadiv, which means the benefactor. Rothschild, the benefactor, the giver. The Rothschild organization, which was explicitly founded to fund the Zionist cause in Palestine, was called Yad Hanadiv in Edmund's honor. Through this organization, Edmund Rothschild awarded grants to fund settlements of Jews in Palestine. He would eventually be the prime force in creating what would come to be known as the State of Israel. Yad Hanadiv, this Rothschild Foundation, has funded a number of significant projects in Israel. They funded and built the Knesset, that's the Parliament building in Jerusalem. They funded and built the Supreme Court building in Jerusalem, funded and built the National Library of Israel, which is more than a library. It's actually a monument to Israel's cultural and intellectual heritage. What's funny about this is when the Rothschilds do it, it's not considered to be an ethno-state. It's not considered nationalism anymore. It's just considered the right thing to do. It's just Zionism. Not to be limited to infrastructure and cultural heritage alone, the Rothschild family's influence extended to political advocacy for the Zionist cause as well, of course. And so the powerful Rothschild mystique, the prestige, helped to garner more and more international support for the Zionist cause. Definition: the Balfour Declaration of 1917 was a public statement issued by the British government announcing support for establishing a national home for the Jewish people and a two-state proposal in Palestine. Doesn't that sound nice? It's a two-state proposal, Summer. It's a two-state proposal. That's very nice, isn't it? What does that really mean when you break it down? It means, right, that we're going to, let's just say Cuba decides to do a two-state solution in the United States. They're going to come in and we're so nice, we're not just going to take it over. We're going to create a Cuban state and a United States here. We'll do that because we're so, we're philanthropists. We're not gangsters, right? What if Canada decided to come into the United States and say, look, we're not going to take it all over. We're just going to split it down the middle and we'll create a Canadian state and you can have half. We'd be pretty pissed off, wouldn't we?
Indeed.
That's what happened. Well, Walter Rothschild, second Baron Rothschild, played a vital role in the Balfour Declaration. In fact, as we saw earlier, as you see here, that's who this Balfour Declaration was addressed to.
What do you feel when you see it here?
I genuinely feel it's one of the most extraordinary moments in the history of the Jewish people.
No doubt. The statement was explicitly address to Walter Rothschild and marked a significant milestone in Zionist history and the path to establishing the State of Israel. The Rothschild family continued to support Jewish causes and the development of Israel throughout the 20th century, regardless of United Nations declarations, regardless of international law, and despite significant public disapproval of the action. If you can find magazines and articles, and we have an internet now, and you can find them, you can look for these things out there, and see, you look for periodicals from that time. Look for periodicals in the early 1900s or right around the time of the Balfour Declaration and right up until the creation of the State of Israel. And look at this, listen to the sentiment in articles. I haven't found any that were supportive of the creation of the State of Israel. And there are reasons for that. It's not just because it's not anti-Semitism. There are reasons for this. You're pushing a people out. You're going to have to destroy one group of people to bring another one in. Well, the U.S. supported the Balfour Declaration, calling for the establishment of a Jewish national home in Palestine at first, even though public sentiment at the time was not supportive. But despite this lack of support, despite growing conflict between Palestinian Arabs and Palestinian Jews, and despite the Department of State's endorsement of a trusteeship rather than a state, Harry Truman ultimately decided to support the cause. And on May 14, 1948, David Ben-Gurion, who was then the head of the Jewish agency, who would become the first prime minister, proclaimed the establishment of the State of Israel. A symbolic 11 minutes later, U.S. President Harry S. Truman, give him hell, Harry, recognized the State of Israel. And what that did was it instantly legitimized the new nation worldwide. Is it any wonder who influenced give him hell, Harry, on this one? I don't think it is. If you've been paying attention tonight, you know exactly why he decided to do that. It wasn't really in his interest. They made it in his interest. So, Jacob Rothschild continued this into the 20th century. He was deeply intertwined with Zionist causes until his death last Sunday. He continued his family's tradition of supporting these causes in what we here call Palestine Israel through the Yad Hanadiv Foundation, doing everything from philanthropic contributions to directly funding illegal Jewish settlements that were developed outside of the internationally designated and agreed upon borders. So Jacob Rothschild fostered many initiatives to strengthen Israel's social fabric while he did everything he could to destroy the social fabric everywhere else. Did everything he could to enhance Israel's global cultural diplomacy, while he did everything he could to destroy it, everything. And I'm probably being too harsh on Jacob here. He continued a legacy, right? This thing was already in place when he got here. In fact, it is true that Jacob Rothschild broke away from the family in 1980 to create his own banking firm, which is now the biggest financial advisory firm in Britain. Well, Jacob's engagement with Zionism wasn't just a matter of financial support, but it represents a continuing commitment to the security of the Jewish homeland. That means military. That means funding war. Well, I want to share this with you on our way out tonight. Summer, what do you think about that? Did you learn anything tonight? Did anything new come out for you?
Yeah, a lot of good new information.
Well, good.
It's good to reflect on it too, in lieu of what's going on right now.
Yeah, and the young man who self-immolated, burned himself Sunday for what? Psalm 37, 1-4 says, "Fret not yourself because of evildoers. Be not envious of wrongdoers, for they will soon fade like the grass." What is it, Sam? What fades like grass?
The grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of our Lord will stand forever.
And they, too, soon will fade like grass and wither like the green herb. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and befriend faithfulness. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Don't worry. Don't worry about the ungodly. It's a common thing for the righteous to fret or be envious of those of the wicked when they prosper. Asaph was bothered by this kind of problem. He was bugged, irritated by the fact that the wicked all around him were prospering. In Psalm 73, he wondered, why do the wicked prosper so much? One theologian said it this way: to fret is to worry. Actually, the term here, don't fret about it, actually means to burn, to fume. This is harmful. It's wrong. And it's needless. Let the one who trusts wait. Wait for the Lord. And events that are happening around us now will justify the action when it's all said and done. Romans 8:28. It is as foolish as it is wicked to repine or be envious at the prosperity of others, whether they are godly or ungodly. It is God who is the dispenser of the bounty they enjoy, and most assuredly he has a right to do what he will with his own. To be envious in such a case is to arraign the providence of God. It's to accuse God. So to worry about when the wicked prosper, to be envious of what they have, is to accuse God. Don't do that. They shall soon be cut down like grass. This metaphor is used in the Bible because the Bible is a Jewish text. It comes out of the Levant, known as the Middle East. This is an area there's a lot of harsh land there, a lot of what we would call desert-like. And so in the spring in the Middle East, especially there in Palestine, vegetation comes up fast after the rains, and then it can go away just as quickly. It can lose that beauty in one day of a hot, dry desert wind. So that's what it means. That's what the world is. It comes and it's beautiful, and then it's gone. David gives the same answer that he gave to Asaph in Psalm 73, understanding that any prosperity experienced by the workers of iniquity is temporary. Jacob Rothschild knows that now. Grass is green for a season, and so is the herb, but they both wither quickly. Charles Spurgeon said, "We think of a wicked man eating a magnificent dinner, having a feast, while a godly man goes hungry. The wicked man eats anything and everything he wants, and his table is loaded, and he enjoys his meal. Then we see the bigger picture. He eats his last meal on death row, and in a moment will face terrible judgment. Now, with larger perspective, the godly man doesn't envy or worry about the wicked man. Evil men, instead of being envied, are to be viewed with horror and aversion. Yet their loaded tables and gilded trappings are too apt to fascinate our poor, half-opened eyes." Unquote. Charles Spurgeon. Another theologian said, "The test is found over time. All the apparent prosperity of the wicked is transient. It passes and perishes, as do the wicked themselves." Verses 3 and 4. "Put your trust and your joy, your delight in the Lord." Instead of worrying and envying, David counseled the man or woman of God to simply trust God and do for his glory. It's amazing how easily, how quickly that we can get distracted by what's going on in the world. We can get distracted away from the very simple task of trusting God and doing his will. We get distracted looking at what seems to be prosperity of the wicked. And that's one way we're often distracted. Charles Spurgeon again said, faith cures fretting. Faith cures fretting. You don't have any faith. That faith comes from God. Sight is cross-eyed and views things only as they seem, hence her envy. Faith has clearer vision to behold things as they really are, hence her peace. You'll find peace in faith. David also counseled the man or woman of God to leave aside worry and envy by simply enjoying the blessings, the simple blessings that you have every moment. He provided Israel a land to enjoy, and his faithfulness was like food for them every day. Let's be clear, we're talking about Israel in the Old Testament. David advised the man or woman of God to replace worry and envy with a conscious delight. That means you have to make an effort. You have to decide that you're going to do it. And that's something the Lord can bless. It means to cheer your heart and mind by considering and by faith receiving these multiple simple blessings that God's given us every day. So what does it mean to delight yourself in the Lord, to find joy? Expect, when the Lord said, expect all your happiness from Him and seek it. Expect happiness from Him and seek it from Him. It includes a deliberate redirection of your emotions, just like Paul and Silas did in prison, singing and praying. We cannot delight without effort. The one who sits back in the couch and just waits for God to bless him is unlikely to receive it. You have to withdraw your eager desires from the things of the earth and attach them, fix them on the Lord. Spurgeon said, in a certain sense, imitate the wicked. Hang on. Because they delight in their reward that they have now. So imitate the wicked in this sense. Take care to delight in your future reward. And so far from envying, then you will pity the prosperous wicked. The reason many apparent Christians do not delight in God this way is because they don't know Him very well. They have some other God in mind. The reason they don't know Him very well because they don't spend time with Him. And the way you do that is through the ordinary means of grace, which we've talked about here. That's prayer, the Scripture, and fellowship. And it says there at the last, He will give you the desires of your heart. Now there is beautiful and a safe, guaranteed promise. The one who truly finds joy in the Lord will find his heart and his desires changed. You won't envy anything in the world anymore. You will progressively be sanctified, steadily become aligned with God's own good desires. And so you see that when you find joy or delight in God, that's the key to happiness. That's the secret, which is no secret at all. It's possible for such desires to be clouded by sin or selfishness, but even when they are clouded, there's almost always some kind of faithful root to the desire that is entirely in the will of God. So the man or woman of God should find his or her rest in this and leave aside worry and envy. So the principle of Psalm 37:4, delight yourself in the Lord and He will give you the desires of your heart, is the foundation for a principle sometimes called heathen Christianism. It's called that by John Piper in his book. And normally you think of hedonism as idolatry, the idolatry of pleasure, doing everything for pleasure, which is, that's the world. That's like the Stoics you see in Acts, the Epicureans and the Stoics. This term has been used to describe a righteous pursuit of satisfaction and pleasure that is rooted in a focus on God. It can be found. Most of all, it shows that when we decide, when we choose, that when we make an effort to find joy in the Lord, that He will bless us. He will give us that delight. He will put it in our heart. And if He is your delight, then He will give you more of Himself. He will pour into you. That's the promise of the Scriptures. That's not some mystical idea. It's just a promise. Later on in Psalm 37, verses 30 and 31, it says, the character of God's righteous one. This is about what is our character? How should our character be? The mouth of the righteous one utters wisdom, and his tongue speaks justice. The laws of his God in his heart, his steps do not slip. So the mouth of the righteous speaks wisdom. David again turns to the conduct of God's righteous man or woman. The righteous man or woman is characterized by the possession of and love for God's word in a way that would be truly fulfilled by the new covenant. He has the word of God in his heart. Jeremiah 31:33. Because of this knowledge that you get from the word of God, that when you read it, study it, as the New Testament says, when you eat it and digest it, make it part of you. When you become reliant upon it, when you believe it, you won't slide, you won't slip, you won't slide away. One theologian said, he that has a Bible in his head has God in his heart. All right. That's our show for this evening. Summer, anything?
Amen to that.
All right. Thank you for being with us tonight, my friends. Thank you for you guys in the chat participating with us tonight. Thank you to The Way for that super sticker tonight.
Yes, thank you very much, The Way.
We appreciate your support. Let's remind you one more time about this. Please take a moment to like this video. Share it with somebody, because that's the only way it's going to get to other people. You can engage with the video by leaving a comment, hitting that thumbs up button. Right now we've got 59 likes, 67 watching. Let's bump it up there. Can we get it to 60 right now before you download the Armor of Truth mobile app today, my friends. It's 100% free. You will get live notifications. You get direct links whenever and wherever we go live. You get exclusive content, articles, reports, and resources, podcast material, Bible studies. If you can support Armor of Truth financially, always support your local church first. But if you can, please know every donation of any amount makes a difference. You can use the Armor of Truth mobile app Give tab, or visit our website, armoroftruth.net/donate, or follow the links in the description under this video. If you can set up a recurring monthly donation to help us plan for the future of AOT, that really helps a lot. So what are you waiting for? Download the Armor of Truth mobile app now. My name is Brad, and I am once again here joined by my talented and precious wife, Summer. Together, we're Armor of Truth, and we're seeking a worldview revolution through God's revelation.
Faith is resistance.
See you, folks.
See you guys. Thank you.
Well, that's a rather interesting position coming from a man on a crusade against the evils of technology.
I'm not against technology, Doctor. I'm against the men who deify it at the expense of human truth.
Armor of Truth, live.
In the age of technocracy, scientism, and pop atheism,
faith is resistance.
course, announced the death of God and called for the birth of the Übermensch, the Superman, who would take humanity to new heights and to create a new world order.
Find us at the Armor of Truth YouTube channel and log on armoroftruth.net.